Okay, now when I click on generate, what do you notice? You then have two controls here. Pull up, sorry. Okay, so if you have this, you then have two controls I have here. So I have my controls flows in as rows, and my risk flows in as column. Now, we raised our risk earlier, but we have not concluded on the risk. Don't forget, we raised the risk earlier, but we've not concluded on the risk. Now, we want to then go back to the risk. Now that you've raised your control, you've done your walkthrough test. Now let's now go to the risk. So let's use overdue receivables from here. Let's come back to overdue receivables. That's okay. Risk, we have raised our risk earlier now. Okay, good. On the risk now, and then talk about the control risk. Based on our assessments, all our control risk is it high, medium, or low? Example, I can say medium. Okay. Now, what is the treatment now? What is then the treatment? What is then the risk response rather? What's then the risk response? Another risk response, I can say what management has said is they have a policy in house to review each account. So management review, let me just do a cap. Management review each account on a monthly basis. Okay. Now, if you have documented the control, what we can also then do is then link the control to this risk. What we can do is to then link the control to the risk. What we can do is to link the control to the risk. How do we link control to the risk? We can link control to the risk by clicking on this edit association. We can link control to the risk by clicking what? Edit association. So what do? We click on edit association, or rather instead of clicking on it, you can click on this linkage. Look at this linkage here. Rather click on linkage, then click on edit association, and then list all the controls that you have in place for you. You have all the controls that you have in place. Then I come here, I click on the control that is related to this, which is what? Review of each account. And I click OK. At that point, you have linked a control to a risk. And when do you link a control to a risk? You link a control to a risk when that control is related to that particular risk. You link a control to the risk when that control is related to that particular risk. Again, you link a control to a risk when that control is related to that particular risk. Okay. Now, the next thing we want to then do is, once I'm done with this, I've linked it. Now, based on the control that management has given me, and based on my response, do I think that the risk have been mitigated or treated? Do I think the risk have been mitigated or treated? So if I think, in my own view, that the risk have been mitigated, that if I think that the risk have been mitigated, I then come here and say, yes, it has been mitigated. If the risk has not been mitigated, I say no. If it has been mitigated in the way, there's a sum. This will then determine the extent of the audit work you will then do. Of course, you know that if the risks have been mitigated, if the risks are not mitigated, you then do more extensive work. But if the risks have been mitigated, then that will reduce the level of the risk you will do. So let's assume some does not be mitigated. The question is, under your audit response, how do you want to respond to this? You want to respond to this via what? Your work program. You want to respond to this via your work program. So what do you then do? You want to respond to this via a work program. Audit has properly addressed this phase. You can type this, okay, respond to this via a work program. These are the steps you're going to take. Now, audit has properly addressed this phase. You cannot respond to this until you have actually done with your risk response. That's actually done with your risk response. So what we need to do now is under the address. If you look at these two documents now, these two documents are now reference to work program for children receivables and also for revenue. That's reference the document for children receivables and also the revenues. For example, these address are not numbers, they're actually the work program. Such that if I stand on this, for example, you will see that that's automatically reference what the work program for children receivables and also the work program for revenue. Because that's the tool that will enable you in addressing such risks. That's the tool that will enable you in addressing such risk. Now, the next thing we want to do now is this. I've linked this, these have been linked by default, but you don't have a linkage here. And what's the purpose of this linkage? The purpose of this linkage is such that if you want to link this now, you can then come here and click on this. You can come here and click on this this icon here. Click on it. Or let me say double click on it. Yes. What Caseware will then do is, of course, you just can open very small, can then adjust this and expand it a bit. What Caseware will then do is you want to peep into the work program to select specific procedures in the work program that you feel it will address this phase. Want to peep into the work program in selecting specific procedure in the work program that you feel it will address this phase. So what you then do is come here, can select expand this, for example. Under the substantive procedure basic, I can also expand further, and under the non-expand further, it will then open some procedures for you that are in the work program. Now, I could stand on the risk and link it to a procedure. I could stand on the procedure, I also link it to a risk. This time around, I'm standing on the risk and I'm linking this to a procedure. This time around, I'm standing on the risk, I'm linking this to a procedure. So if my view, I felt like this particular procedure, this particular risk, now this procedure allows 4A, 4B, let's say 3B, we address this specific risk. I can come here and click on OK. Now, when I click on OK, then again, I come here and click on OK. Now, if you try to bring this for the second time, click cancel before you then click on OK. Okay, that's fine. So what happens now is, in this particular procedure, I have 3A, 4A, 4B that I will feel will address this particular risk. Once I'm done, I can then come and don't forget I said sum here. Okay, now, and I've also linked this to my control. What would then happen here is, under the review of monthly age account in the control here, and under overdue receivable, I will see P and D here because I've linked them together. That means P and D means preventive and detective. Why? At the bottom here, I will then see S, which says sum, because I'm responding to this. And what are we responding on? It says to control procedure mitigate this field factor. The question is it sum? Is it N? Is it yes? So I'll see sum now. So I click OK. Let's wait for. Okay, what do you notice? You see P and D here, you see sum here. Okay, now you see P and D here, which is preventive and detective. Also, you then see what sum here. Now, what what's the response to sum that Caseware is addressing? Then Caseware is asking, do this control procedure mitigate the V factor? I see sum here. Now the next thing you want to now do is, after you have done all of this, now this is where you then assess your control risk. Based on the evaluation of this risk, the level of the control risk by assertion is, can I say okay? The level of control risk, this is where your professional judgment also still comes in place. The high, medium, and say high, medium, just put that. But what is important here is, I can't say all my risks here cannot be say yes, 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 and this will be high. This, of course, will be low. We say low. But if it's N, N, S, they can say high, medium, or high across the board. And this is how you assess the control risk, because you have listed all the control for this business cycle. And you have evaluated all the control that do those control actually mitigate the possible risk you have raised. If you feel the control did not mitigate it, then you then assess the control risk here. Once you've assessed the control risk, what do? I do Control S to save. I do Control S to save it. I then go back to my FSA. I go back to my FSA. So what will then happen on the FSA, on that trade analysis is, I'll just come here and do what? Propose. Once I do propose, should then bring up high, medium, and this is pulling directly from what? From control design, if you hover on it. All together. Okay, so let's proceed. So what then happens is this. You then give you high, medium. Now, because of what? This is related to what? To revenue, receivable, and received business cycle, and I've completed what? The control design for revenue, receivable, and received. If I go back to the FSA, for example, I come to cash and cash equivalent. And I come to cash, I say inherent risk propose. I don't have any risk, it's so low. But if I come here and say propose here, nothing will come here because I have not completed the control risk in the control design for investment. If I want to complete that, then of course, I'll then open this document, look at this document, which under control design again, I'll open this control design for investment, open it similarly. I'll just show you something now. Open it similarly, and then complete the control design. For example, this is the control design for investment. If I come here straight away and say low across board, for example, just say low across board, good, and I save, I'm just showing you a principle. If I go back to my FSA now, anywhere I see investment and I come here and do propose, it will still pull up low. So what I'm trying to establish now is, whatever you have your controls risk, pulled from the respective business cycle. For example, for trade and receivable that we have here, if I go to my revenue, receivable, and received, it's also revenue, receivable, and received, that's the business cycle. If I come here again, I click propose, to still give me what? High, medium, based on what I completed in my what? In my control design. Good. Having said that, we're still working with trade and receivables. Having said that, I can then proceed. Let me change this to high, or let me leave it to medium. Now, having said that, I can then proceed into what risk of material misstatement.